Good day, my children. I'm going to revise 2D arrays with you very quickly before the exams. This is a 2D array where we have marks of learners. These are the subjects. The subject forms the headings of the column. So coming down are columns. So this column for English, Afrikaans, Allo, Maths. And each one is a row. Now to display in a rich edit with headings, we need to firstly display the subject headings on the first row. So we have to combine the subjects English, Afrikaans, Allo, Maths, so on, using #9 to form a string, and we simply display the string. Now to display the heading for each row, that has to be done in the for loop, because the two for loops are required to run for each row. And in each row, you're running through each column. There are 3 rows and 7 columns. All right, so 3 rows and 7 columns. So you're going to have 2 loops. The first loop is for the first row, and in the first row, you're going to run 7 times for the 7 columns. So you'll have that displayed. Now we're going to revise this, and then I'm going to show you how it's done in a string grid. So looking at your code to display in your rich headed, right? We have S line is empty. So from 1 to 7, for 7 columns, S line is S line plus the subject. Now the subjects are stored in a 2D array, in a 1D array. Array subjects is 1 to 7 of string. So there's your subjects. So we need to combine English, Afrikaans, Allo. So that is done 7 times. It's easier to double click there so it gets straight to the code. So 1 to 7, S line is S line plus #9 plus array subjects. So we get a space between the subjects. And that will give us this code here with a space, a tab space. Now we're going through the entire 2D array. So your row, there are 3 rows, learner 1, learner 2, learner 3. So for the first row, we let S line be learner 1. And we combine to S line each of the marks for learner 1. Note your array 2D is always called your row first and then your column. So your arrow marks is by row and then by column. So row 1, column 1. This inside for do loop running from 1 to 7 will go back up for column 2. So for the first row, you will go in through 7 columns, combining the marks with the learner name and display. Hence, learner name combined with all the marks it will display. Then it will have to start with learner 2 again to combine all the marks. So if you look at the code, when the 7 columns are done and it's displayed for the first row, we go back to the second row, take the learner's name and display. So I combine the marks and hence display that the marks for learner 2, and we'll continue for learner 3. So that is just display onto your rich edit. Now we also have a component called a string grid. So to display on a string grid is already marked into rows and columns. So if you're looking at your object inspector, you have row count. I have 4 rows. Now if you look at the rows, there's row 1, row 2, row 3, or starting from here, row 1, 2, 3. But there's also a row 0. The row 0 is on which the headings fall. Now if you recall all your components, like your combo box starts with 0 as well. Item index 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So this is row 0, 1, 2, 3. And this is column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it will be regarded as 8 columns, including column 0. So it's from 0 to 7, which is 8 columns. So your column count is 8. So when you insert a string grid, you can change the rows and columns so that the values fit in here. Now the difference between your rich edit and your string grid, in your rich edit, you had to form a line to display each row. With a string grid, these are all placeholders. So values can be inserted at this, in the string grid at a position. So we're looking at the code for the string grid. If we need to display the headings, then we are going to go through row 0 in this case and column. Your headings start from here. Let's look at your headings quickly. So your heading start at column 1 to column 7, but it's on your row 0. So looking at the code, right? So it's from columns 1 to 7, not column 0. Nothing goes in column 0, but from columns 1 to 7, row is 0. Row is 0 in columns 1 to 7. Now note the difference between a string grid and your normal 2D array. Your normal 2D array has row, then column. So the big difference between both is that this is column and then row. So whatever we do in a normal display, you will change for your string grid. You will write the column and the row opposite. So it's column and then row. So it's row 0, that's your first row, and your 7 columns will get the subject headings. So your row 0 and your 7 columns will get the subject headings. Then we have to put in the rest of the array. Now here we have to combine them as a string because you're doing each row at a time. But here, because you're going to the exact position, we can fill in all the learners. So in this case, it will be column 0, but it's your rows are 1, 2, 3. Column 0, but your rows are 1, 2, 3. So we look at the code, column 0, and the rows run from 1 to 3. Should be 1 to 3 and not 1 to 7. Should be 1 to 3 because there are 3 rows. And there are 3 rows, 1, 2, 3. 3 rows with information, and row 0 has the heading. Now to insert values in the entire grid here, the rows and the columns. It's still, there are 3 rows and 7 columns. So if you're looking at your code, there are 3 rows and 7 columns. The difference here is we are not using an S line. We simply take the value, array marks, convert it to an integer, and store it in the string grid. Now note the string grid again, column and then row. But your 2D array is row and then column. So your difference when you're displaying in a string grid is the column is reflected first and then the row. So for a string grid display, just simply swap this around. Whatever you have here, row and column, that becomes column and row. See, your row is here, your row is in the second half. First part is for column. There's your column here, first half is column, second part is your row. So we're going to run this. Your answer is going to look like this, but I'm going to run a portion at a time so you can see it. That's each line. We can simply do this for the entire code. Your curly bracket to start and end of the code. So we'll run the first line. So running this, if we generate some values and we display with headings, that's your headings. Now, if I display a string grid, there's the first row being populated. To populate the first, the column, the first row is populated with values. Now we're populating the first column, which is all the rows, the 3 rows, the headings for the 3 rows, which is your first column. That's populated. This is the first row, but they are column headings. but it is your first row, but you're running through column heading. So your column runs from 1 to 7. This is your rows running from 1 to 3. Although it's the first column, which is position 0, rows are running from 1 to 3. See, your rows are running from 1 to 3 and the column is 0. Remember, we're interchanging this with your column and your row. Your row and column values, again, are interchanged. CR and your normal 2D array is RC. So running this, as a normal display. And in the event, you have to use a string grid. All right, so we displayed that row, which is the column headings, then this, the learner names, and finally your marks. Now you cannot use a string grid in a question unless they give you a string grid. So if they give you a rich edit, in the question paper, if there is a rich edit, you have to display in a rich edit. You cannot introduce a string grid and place values in a string grid. You have to use the component that is given. All the best, boys and girls. I hope you're doing well in your studying. We'll see you on the day of the exams.